Hi, Peter Balker here, and welcome to today's edition of the Transition Guy. Now, today's episode, I want to speak to you about leadership and the importance of how to lead well, and actually a great example of the devastation and damage leading badly has on a company and actually has on a country. And the example I want to use today is Donald Trump. Donald Trump's been used very often recently. He's been in the media all the time, and he's used as a great example of how not to lead. Now, this isn't a political episode. I don't really care about US politics, in all fairness. He's done some great stuff for the country. He's also done some stupid shit. But when you come towards the end of a presidency, what tends to happen is the president has privileges around pardons. And in recent times, he's pardoned a number of people. Now, actually using the pardon isn't the problem. It's the people that you pardon that perhaps that's where the issues tend to lie. And I want to run through a couple of the pardons that he's actually sort of bestowed upon people over the last couple of weeks. And what's interesting is what kind of people he's been pardoning, and more importantly, what kind of message does that send out to people? So the first one I want to talk about is Paul Manfort. So in 2018, he was convicted, okay, there's the word, convicted, for meddling in the 2016 US elections. Then we have Roger Stone. He was also convicted, yes, convicted, for lying to Congress over WikiLeaks and the whole Hillary Clinton debacle, how her emails got leaked and everything, and that really was very damaging to her campaign. And by the way, Paul Manfort was also he was convicted for financial fraud. So between the two of them, they've both been convicted. Then you've got Charles Kushner, who happens to be the father of his son-in-law. Now, if this isn't nepotistic, what is? So Charles was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison for tax evasion. Now, where have we heard that one before? Who didn't want to talk about his taxes? Mr. Trump. Funny how like attracts like. So he was actually convicted and sentenced for that. And also, he's been convicted of campaign finance offences and witness tampering. What an upstanding individual. A great role example for everybody else. And quite close to the White House. That in itself shows interest in judgment. Then you've got sort of the Blackwater military contractors who were involved in the Iraqi 2007 massacre. And there was a huge outroar in 2007 over that. Yet 4 of those contractors have now been pardoned. How does killing civilians justify being pardoned? And yet they complain about having a gun problem and a killing problem in America. I wonder where they're learning this stuff from. And finally, Michael Flynn. And he's probably one of the most high-profile people. He was a former national security advisor who was convicted in the sort of Robert Mueller investigation for, again, election fraud, election tampering. He was actually convicted. And you've got to start looking at all this stuff. I think so far, Donald Trump has pardoned 5 people that were involved in the whole election debacle with the Russians. Now, Donald Trump aside, what you'll find is that this behaviour isn't necessarily just restricted to governments. In all fairness, this kind of nepotistic behaviour can be very often seen in corporations and businesses alike. And the challenge is, and it always goes on, but what people tend not to realise is the impact it has on other people. Imagine you're working with colleagues and they really are doing a totally shit job. And it does happen. Yet they can get away with blue murder and still go out there and be promoted or rewarded for doing an atrocious job. Well, how would that make you feel? How do you think it makes those people feel? Do you think they're going to be super motivated wanting to do a great job? I very much doubt it. Yeah, I cannot tell you the amount of times I get called up, okay, can you come and do some teamwork with us? Yeah, no problem. So I go into the organisation, we start looking at the team. And actually, when you've got this kind of behaviour, where people are being truly sort of forgiven and rewarded for bad behaviour, bad performance, no matter how many paintballing days you do, no matter how many restaurant events you have, no matter how many sort of outside team building events you want to hold, it isn't going to fix this fundamental problem in your business, because no one is going to be motivated by a one-day paintballing session when they see that day in, day out, things are being violated, people are getting away with things they shouldn't get away with, because why would they bother to work hard? Because they'll believe honestly in their hearts of hearts that them working hard has no point, has no meaning, because you can do bad things and you'll get rewarded for doing bad things. And considering that the leader of the world's most powerful country in the world is doing this stuff, imagine the message that sends out to the nation. It isn't a great one. And that's not what we call leadership, that's what we call leadership. And the questions you've got to look at is, what kind of behaviours are happening in your organisation? Because if this kind of stuff is happening in your organisation, and maybe you are the perpetrator of such behaviour, you need to stamp it out quite pronto. Because if you don't, you're going to destroy the morale and the fabric of your people in your organisation. Now, if you've enjoyed today's episode and you want to sort of continually be informed about future episodes, please hit the subscribe button, share it with others, like it. If you've got any comments or questions, please share them in the comments section below. I'll always get back to you. And if you've got an organisational challenge with morale, perhaps you feel that this behaviour is actually prevalent in your business, it may not necessarily be you driving it, but it's others, and you would like to look at some strategies on how perhaps you can root it out, why don't you head over to booker.com and book a free call. Let's have a little chat about your business and see what we can do to help you get rid of this problem. So once again, thank you very much for tuning into today's episode. And remember, failing to learn is learning to fail. Please stay safe.